Hello and welcome, I'm Elaine Canyon, sweetly writing happily ever after, one book at a time. And in this video, we're building your cover design toolbox. We've covered color, and now we're going to dive into typography. In this video, I'm going to introduce you to typography. When most people hear the word typography, all they think about are the words in a design. But typography is a lot more than just the words that you put into your design. Typography is the art of arranging letters and text in a way that makes it clear and legible, but also visually appealing to the reader. We accomplish this by using style, appearance, and structure. Style would be the specific typefaces we choose, appearance would be things like color, and structure would be the sizing we use to create hierarchy. And just like color, typography emits emotions. Now there's a lot we can dive into for typography, and it can get really detailed and in depth about how a specific type is designed and created and put together. And if you want to know more about that, I encourage you to go dig into it. But this video is going to only give you the basics that I think you need in order to make educated decisions about the typefaces you use in your book cover. And if you're going to be formatting your own books, the body copy as well. And we'll talk about more what that means as we get further into this video. If you're interested in knowing the history of typography, it's pretty interesting, but I found a video recently that makes it a lot more interesting than any of my classes ever made it. It's by the YouTuber Struthless, and I'm gonna link it in the cards and also down below in the description. And he does a really good job of making it fun and entertaining to learn about the history of typography. So in this video, we're going to focus on learning the different types of typefaces and the emotions that they can elicit. And in the next video, we'll talk about making sure that your book cover is legible, readable. That also applies for the inside of your book if you're formatting it, and then how to choose the right fonts for your book cover and also inside of your book as well. So let's get started with defining a few terms. You've heard me say typeface multiple times in this video. Typeface refers to a family of fonts. Think Arial. Typeface includes every way that you can use the Arial font, regardless of its size and regardless of whether it's bold or italic. Arial is a typeface. Now, font refers to the weights, widths, and styles that you see in a specific typeface. So Arial Bold is a font. Arial Italics is a font. Arial Regular is a font. And we can technically dive down even more and say that Arial Regular 12 point is a different font than Arial Regular 14 point. That's getting really in-depth and detailed, but for the purpose of this, I just want you to understand that a font refers to the ways you can change a typeface, and a typeface is just the style in general. Now, I talked about regular, bold, and italic in font, and what we call that is font weight. So the heavier a font weight is, the more attention it grabs, and the lighter it is, the more it blends into the background. And that'll be important when we get into the next video. But just so you have that understanding that if I use the term weight, that's what I'm talking about. Now, typeface, you've got different kinds of it. Obviously, Arial is going to be really different than Lucinda Console. Like, there's different ways that typeface can look, and we have names that we assign these different types. And each type of typeface is going to elicit a different kind of emotion. Now, I'm not going to dig into the nitty-gritty of what sets different typefaces apart. That gets very detailed, and at that point, you're pushing into wanting to learn how to design your own typeface, which is a lot of fun and something that if you want to learn more about, I highly suggest you go and dig into it. But for the purposes of just designing a book cover, I don't think you need to know what the difference between a vertical axis and a slanted axis and a typeface is and things like that. So all I'm going to be covering here is introducing you to the different kinds of typeface and the styles that are within those typefaces, and then the emotions that they can elicit when you use them properly. So in this video, we're going to cover the 4 typefaces and the different styles that are in them. To start with, we're going to talk about serif typefaces. A serif typeface refers to the little marks that you see at the starts and ends of letters. We call these marks feet. Serif typefaces work really well for body copy. When I talk about body copy, what I'm referring to is when you have multiple paragraphs of text that need to be used. So when you're book formatting body copy. All of these styles work really well for printed body copy, except for the last one that we'll talk about, which is slab serif. But know that these other ones serve that purpose well. As far as the emotions go, serif typefaces convey a feeling of formality. They have a sense of stability, intellect, seriousness, tradition, history, authority, and integrity. One of the places you see serifed typefaces pretty consistently are in logos for universities, especially universities that have been around for a long time. They like to show that they're steeped in tradition and that they are trustworthy and that you going to their university is going to give you that sense of establishedness and prestige. You see these emotions being pulled forward when you see a serifed typeface used. As I talk about each style of these typefaces, I'm going to put up on the screen an example so that you can get a feel for what these different typefaces look like. Now, serif typefaces have 4 styles. The first is old style. The example up on the screen right now is called Bookman Old Style. The next style is transitional. A good example of this is Times New Roman. Modern is the next style of a serif typeface, and a good example of that is Bodenai. It's actually one of the earliest examples of this typeface. And then, like I talked about earlier, there's slab serif. Rockwell is the example that I've chosen for slab serif to show you here. Slab serif is different than the rest of the serif fonts because it elicits its own emotions. Some of them it inherits from the serif typeface, but a lot of them are unique to itself. So when you're using a slab serif font, you're going to be pulling out emotions such as bold and enduring, modern, powerful, and masculinity, while also keeping that sense of tradition and stability. All right, so now let's talk about sans serif fonts. Now, for those of you who speak a Latin language, you will know that sans means without. These are fonts that don't have the feet on them that we talked about. They lack all of those extra ornamental marks. These are really clear to read, and they're used a lot in headlines because they can grab attention very easily. We use sans serif more frequently when we're doing body copy that's on a screen. It's been shown that sans serif tends to read better when it's on a screen than when it's on a printed paper. Now, that doesn't mean that it doesn't read well on the printed paper. It just means it has a slight benefit over a serif font when it comes to looking at a screen. Sans serif fonts convey a feeling of minimalistic. They're clean and they're bold. They tend to feel very progressive and open and friendly. You see them used to convey a sense that it's contemporary, it's the here and the now, it's sleek, it's chic. They're also used to be sort of futuristic, but they can be elegant and straightforward without frills and giving it a sense of informality that way as well. Sans serif typefaces also have 4 types. The first is grotesque, and it was called that because this was one of the first sans serif styles that came about. And most people didn't care for it because it lacked the formality. And so grotesque was the name it was given. These fonts are not grotesque. I happen to like a lot of what are considered grotesque fonts, but the name is stuck and so we keep using it. The example I have up on the screen right now is Franklin Gothic. Neo-grotesque is the next style. And for the example that I chose for that is actually just the Microsoft Sans Serif font. I like this one because it's really easy to read. Next is Humanist. And for that one, I've chosen Skina, which is one of Microsoft's newer fonts. Lastly is Geometric. The font up on the screen is called Tenorite, and it's also one of Microsoft's newer fonts. The next type of typeface we're going to talk about is called Script. When you hear script, a lot of people think cursive, and that's exactly what this is. Script typefaces represent those carried and fluid strokes that you see in handwriting, especially in cursive. Script typefaces convey the feelings of warmth and things that are organic. There's a personal touch when you use a script typeface. They also bring forth that feeling of the artistic and creativity. They can be really fun depending on the style that you choose. They're also very romantic and fanciful, and several of them can feel very childlike. Now, script typefaces have 5 styles. The first is formal. What's up on the screen right now is the Künstler script, And you can see that this looks very wedding invitation style. Like it has all of those really beautiful elements, but there's not a lot of play in a formal script style. Casual script styles include fonts like Mistral. And as you can see, Mistral has a very different feel than the Künstler script had. The next style I'm going to show you from the script typeface is the calligraphic style. For this one, I've chosen the Edwardian script. And you can see in the Edwardian script that it has that very specific calligraphy pen feel to it, as opposed to like the Künstler script, which didn't vary the weight of the strokes of the letter all that much. The next style is handwriting. And I've chosen free script because it looks like someone just went through and wrote it. It doesn't have a lot of frills to it, but it does have that feel of someone's filling out something and trying to make it look a little nicer than maybe if they were going to go through and print it. And finally, we have the black letter or Gothic style of script. And for this one, I chose Old English. And this is what you see in things like those really old Bibles that when you think of calligraphy from the medieval era, this is the style. Now we're on to our last kind of typeface, and this is the decorative or the display typeface. These are the typefaces that more likely than not, if you write in sci-fi, if you write in fantasy, if you write in romance, if you write in thriller, if you're in one of these genre-specific areas, these fonts might be what you're using, but they're only going to be for your title, and we'll talk more about that next time. But a display or decorative font is specifically meant to grab attention. It emphasizes the text and it stands out. Now it also needs to be easy to read. This is where a lot of display fonts, especially free ones, if you're looking through them, can get you into trouble. If it's not easy to read, it's not a good font, ever. The whole purpose of typeface and font is to make it so you can communicate something. And yes, if we're going into art, then you absolutely can make it so it's not easy to read. And that's a completely different side of typography. But for what you're doing, you're making a book cover. And if your audience, if your target reader can't pick up your book cover or look at it on a thumbnail and see the title and read the title, there's a problem and it's a bad typeface for you. So if you want to go into the artistic side of typography, that is a place where you can start looking into fonts that aren't legible or wingdings, because that's just symbols and things like that. That's a cool side of the artistic side of typography. But we're in the marketing side of typography right now because we want to sell your book cover. And so you need to make sure that if you do go with a display or decorative font, which if you're in genre-specific writing, you probably will, it's important that they can still read it. As far as the feelings that display and decorative fonts can convey, you'll see them used for novelty, to be trailblazing. Sometimes they can be really adaptive for a lot of different elements. They're often really unique and different. So you can give that feeling of standing out and being nonconformist, but they're often distinct and interesting and catch the eye. When you think of a display font, you can think of things like the Star Wars or Star Trek or Harry Potter fonts. They're not meant to be used for an entire paragraph. They don't work well for that. But what they do work well for is the title and making that brand recognition. Display fonts do really well with that, and we'll talk more about that in the next video. The example I put up on the screen is a really popular display font. This is called Chiller, and you'll see it used constantly in Halloween things and scary things. And part of the reason for that is because it does a really good job of eliciting a specific emotion. And that's where display fonts are really fun to play with, because display fonts, depending on which font you choose, can actually give its own emotion based on what it looks like. And we talked a little bit about the designer's eye in the last color video. And this is one of those places where you're going to start training your designer's eye. Display fonts can do almost anything, but it does require you to understand what the font is doing and how you're using it and applying it. Now you know the different kinds of typefaces and the different styles that they have. We've also talked about the emotions that they can convey when you use them properly. In the next video, we're going to talk about making sure your design is legible, readable, how to combine typefaces together, and specifically how to help you choose the right typeface for your book cover. Do you have a favorite typeface? I'd love to hear about it down in the comments. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up so we can help other authors find it. And if you don't want to miss my next video where I teach you how to choose the right typeface for your book cover, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I post videos on Wednesdays about discovery writing, cover design, and how to publish on a little tiny budget. I hope to see you again next time.